Bark About, the podcast where we're going to talk about dogs, dog training, and whatever else strikes my fancy. My name is Chad Mackin, and I will be your host and your guide on this journey into the world of dogs. All right, everybody, welcome back. Today I've got my good friend Marc Goldberg on, and he's here to talk about the book that he just is about to come out with him and the monks in Uski called The Art of Training Your Dog. And that's all I'm going to say. We're going to get right to it. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, we're back for another episode. Thanks for tuning in. I've got my friend here, Marc Goldberg. I've known Marc for a very long time. He's been instrumental in my development, one of my mentors early on when I first started joining the larger dog training community. And interestingly enough, he's the guy who got me interested in learning about e-collars in the first place. So, and he's got a book that's coming out just next month, I think, that's going to be focused on e-collar training. So, Marc, welcome to the show. What's going on?
Well, thank you for having me on Something to Bark About with Chad Mackin. I'm so pleased to be here with you today. And it always makes me laugh a little bit when you call me one of your mentors, because I think you were training for like 10 or 12 years before we ever even met that fateful day in Hutto at an ISP conference.
Yeah, well, I was, but I was, I hadn't had any real mentors before that. Like, I mean, I had a guy who got me into it, who was pretty much a con man, I found out later on, and I had a book, and that was the Keeler Method of Dog Training, and those two things and a whole lot of chutzpah got me got me pretty far.
Yeah, no, that's great. And in fact, actually, that's not all that different than my entry into dog training world. Really, I had one class when I was a kid with my dog, and after we graduated from that, standard general obedience class, all I had was books. And actually, I started before Bill Keeler wrote that book. So that, it would have been a lot easier, I think, my entry into dog training if I would have had his book, which we'll talk about, because I really, Brother Christopher, from the Monks of New Skeet, well, I should say, the Monks of New Skeet and I co-authored the book that we're going to discuss today a little bit. It's called The Art of Training Your Dog, How to Gently Teach Good Behavior Using an E-Collar. So we'll talk about that. But I think the point that I was going for is that books are exactly the same way I started, and as you did too. You at least had a book with a coherent system, like a method, like do this the first week, do this the second week. And the closest I had to that was a book by Blanche Saunders called Training You to Train Your Dog. And Blanche was on the forefront of establishing the AKC obedience trial system in the 40s and 50s, I want to say. So she wrote a nice book, but how nice it is that we have people together today that we can meet. We have an ICP, we have friendships, we have social media. It's a lot easier to be a dog trainer today, folks, because it's not just you alone with a book. That was the hard way in.
Mm-hmm.
Chad, that was the hard way in.
Well, yeah, and it was really interesting because when I first joined the IACP, I didn't know where I stood as a trainer. Like, I didn't know if I was any good or I mean, I know I had a lot of happy clients and happy customers, and dogs seemed to be getting better, but I really didn't have a training community to sort of find where I fit. And so it was very interesting to jump into a group of that was so mixed and so full of so many veterans and so many newbies and all points in between, and finding where my level was in that paradigm. But the thing that was most interesting for me is that was the first place I ran into e-collars being used as training tools for personal pets. Up until that point, everybody I knew who used them was either into police dog training, search and rescue, or gun dog stuff.
Yeah.
And I had missed that because clearly the people in the IACP had already gotten on board with that, and I'm reading all these messages about e-collars. And I'll be very frank with you, I was a little bit judgmental early on.
Yeah, me too.
Like
me too.
Like, I was like,
shock collars. Are you kidding?
It was, well, so it wasn't even so much that, because I was not completely against them, but the reliance on them that all the trainers seemed to have at that time seemed very faddish, and it seemed very much a shortcut for the way they were writing and talking about it. It felt like there were shortcuts, and it wasn't until I met you at the conference in Hutto and you put a e-collar on my hand, and you talked me through what you would do with a dog, and I was like, oh wow, that's nothing. That is really actually kind of cool. Like up until that point, when people, now we're talking good e-collars here, right? Not mass produced garbage that you can get for $10 on Amazon. Good collars. But it was a Tritronics collar. I think it was probably a Flyway that you had on, but it was the one you were using for Diablo, whatever that was, right? But you put that collar on my hand, and up until that point, I'd seen all the emails and stuff. People talk about tap, 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 tap. It's a tap. It's a tap. It's a tap. And to me, that was just euphemism for a shock, like a low level shock. Like it wasn't even. And then when I heard that, I'm not even saying I was like, oh, that's terrible. Like I didn't assume that it was a painful application of electricity, but I assumed it would feel like a shock, right?
And I think it's that's a good starting point to talk about how I came to e-collars, why I showed e-collars to you, why I showed e-collars to the monks in New Skeet, how we developed a method, and why we wrote a book. It's the perfect starting point. Because here's the thing. If you go back in time, and I do, I do go back in time. I'm 62 years old, and I got my first dog and started training him in 1969. So it's a very, very long time ago for me now, practically half a century, of working with, experimenting, and trying to improve the lives of dogs and loving the species. It's a very long time. But in that era, I came across all sorts of tools. I was just a kid, but I was a judgmental little booger. And so I didn't like anything other than standard equipment. Somebody did show me a shock collar, and that's what they were rightly called in those days. They are wrongly called that today, or at least good equipment is not a correct terminology anymore. And I'll explain why in a moment. But the old technology was a shock collar. It was a big box on a big collar with a giant walkie-talkie looking remote control with a big 3-foot whip antenna. It had one button on it. It was red. And I set it off on my hand to just see what it felt like, because it only had one level. And that level was vaporize. And that thing blew me across the room, and my arm went numb to the shoulder. To the elbow. My arm I just remember it went numb from the hand to the elbow for a little while. It was an exceptionally powerful jolt. But the year that I felt that was 1970, right? And if you think about the evolution in technology that almost everything has gone through, you know what? In 1970, my family's telephone was bolted onto the wall. Okay.
I wasn't alive.
Well, the good old days. I miss those days. Oh, we can reminisce when I walked, uphill to school in the snow both ways, right? But I'm just kind of want to point out the things that changed. The telephones were bolted into the wall, and the wires were run behind the wall. We thought it was exceptionally cool when telephones became like hooked up to wires that were long and curly, and you could like walk around the house a little bit while talking on the phone. I mean, this was a crazy technological revolution. So if you just think about the things that have changed since 1970 to now, it stands to reason that computers, smartphones, miniaturization of everything evolves. So when our mutual friend Mary Mazzari, late 90s, wanted to go look at e-collars, as she called them, I got a little offended, and I didn't want to go, and I didn't go. But then she said to me, you really need to come. I'm going to go look again. We'll go to this little seminar and see these things in use. And I went under protest. Honestly, I was a little bitter, that I was going to this thing. Brother Christopher says that when I introduced e-collars to him, his immediate reaction was not good either, because he thought, if I need to use a shock collar to train a dog, I must be a deficient trainer after all these years, because he had been training dogs like me for 25 years by the time he first encountered an e-collar, which I showed him. But I had the same reaction as him. I thought, well, what kind of trainer am I if I need this? For the same reasons as what you thought, must be a shortcut. But I'll tell you what I saw when I saw modern e-collars. And by the way, this is late 90s, so that's 20 years ago. Boy, have they gotten even better, like so much better even since then. But I'll tell you what, even 20 years ago versus 40, 50 years ago, what I saw was interesting. It was intriguing. It was also a little troubling, to be honest with you, because what I saw back then in the like 99, 2000, I saw dogs learning things on e-collar more quickly than what I could teach it, and without the sort of reaction that they would have had on that old generation of shock collars with with one button. These were a lot more subtle. I mean, you could put them in your hand, you could feel it. I mean, you felt it pretty good, I'll be honest with you, but you wouldn't say ow, ow, ow either, precisely. And the dogs didn't have real strong negative reactions, and they learned things quickly, really quickly, like sit, stay, don't move, really quickly. But I said there was also a troubling side to what I saw in that era. And the troubling side was the dogs weren't grooving on the training. They were not having fun. And this is something that I admire about Chad, and your training is, you and I, we have a common philosophy, and that is like, look, dog, we'd like you to learn this thing because it'll improve your quality of life in ways you can't imagine, like come when called, that kind of thing. It'll improve your life in ways you can't imagine. It'll make you safer. It'll improve the relationship with your family. They'll take you more places. They'll quit locking you up and yelling at you. So you need this. Plus, they're paying me, so I got to deliver it. But it would really do my heart good if you'd like it, if you could enjoy it, if we could do this as a mutual experience, So you and I don't like forcing things down dogs' throats. We want them to enjoy their experience. And I didn't see that in this form of training. What I saw was speed. I saw precision. I just didn't see joy. And so what I really set my mind to was how to take the best of what modern technology was starting to offer, but combine it with the ability to read a dog, to know what that dog is thinking, and the ability to love a dog, and to combine technology, love, and a good read of the dog in such a way as to help dogs learn more reliably, more quickly, but to still enjoy the process. And that took 3 years, but we got there. And so that's why we're having this conversation now.
Yeah, and I want to say something too. And again, I'm not just trying to be like, I'm not trying to be like a suck up here, but I want people to understand, because the story. I mean, I tell the story a lot, and you've heard it before. But when I first met you, I didn't like you. I thought you were a button jockey, right? So let me set the stage for my listeners. We're at IAC, my first IACP conference. I believe it was your first too. You'd been a member for the organization for a while, but that was the first one you come to, right?
Yeah, it was the second ever that they held.
Yeah, and I had not had any connection with you on because you weren't even on the safe hands list at that time. So I had never even seen emails from you yet, right? So you were brand new to me, and we're at this reception dinner, or their service pizza, but we're standing around eating pizza. And I'm talking to some trainer from San Francisco who I remember. That's all I remember about him. But we're talking about complexity of training, all this stuff, and you walk up.
Yeah, just push the button.
Go put an e-collar on that dog. And the next subject comes up, put an e-collar on that dog. The next subject comes up, put an e-collar on that dog. And I thought, this guy can't train without electronics. But that's not what it was. And I very quickly discovered that when I started to read what you would write about dogs when you joined the safe hands list. And then when I saw you handle a dog, there are a lot of people online who promote themselves as being great dog trainers. I mean, now we have videos, so it's easier. But back then, there were some people who could talk beautifully about dogs, write beautifully about dogs, and you would think that their handling would be the most elegant, seamless, beautiful thing that you'd ever see in your life. And you see them handle a dog, and what they describe and what they do is nothing alike. When I saw you handle a dog, and there was no e-collar involved, you were demoing long line work for Mary Missouri at presentation she did.
Yeah, that was video. There's a DVD of that someplace, and they didn't tell me until after that the dog was a biter.
Yeah, but you just with 15-foot line, with a dog that had a bite history that you didn't even know about, in a crowded room, the timing, the touch you had with that dog, how quickly you got that dog to be following you, It was such a beautiful thing, and I have never been so surprised about how much better somebody's work was than what they were saying to me showed. It's usually the opposite, right? You're so humble in the way you write. You're so humble in the way you present it. But you put a leash in your hand, and it just blew me away. And it still, every time I watch you work a dog, I have a similar experience where I'm like, oh, I'm starting to think I'm getting pretty good at this, and then like that. There is a beautiful read on dogs. And I bring this up because there are a lot of trainers out there who I do believe are too dependent on tools and too reliant on tools. And when you walked up to us and you were saying, no, put an eco on that dog, you were not a guy who didn't know what to do without it. You were a guy who was excited about the value that this equipment brought to our industry. And it's like a new piece of software in the tech industry that's really revolutionary. You were excited about what this meant for us as trainers. It was not the opposite where you're like, now I'm finally good. And I think that's a big distinction. It was a huge thing for me to see somebody of your quality, saying, no, these are really good. These are really valuable. And that's why I've avoided, I've never been that guy who says, if I have to use this, I'm no good. Because I don't have to use it, right? I don't use it even on most of my dogs, but it does have so many advantages. And it's so wonderful for just helping to speed up that process for both the dog and the client. There's so many advantages as professionals for us to learn how to do it and do it well. So I'm really glad that you wrote this book.
People have been training dogs for thousands and thousands of years, millennia before electricity was ever even, discovered. So no, you don't need a battery operated device to train a dog. You certainly don't. And I trained dogs for 25 years before I ever picked one of those things up, except for that one that, practically made me cry when I was 12. But the but is, I don't know a quicker way to teach a dog off-leash reliability. I just don't know a quicker way. And so that's what I like about it for my particular life. Now, we all have different goals. Some people, the major goal would be to, make it so I can walk my dog. I live in the city. I'm not going to be, doing long distance off leash recalls off of squirrels, but I want to walk my dog every day. And I want that to be a wonderful experience. Well, you don't need an e-collar for that. You don't. Although, mind you, I think every dog needs a solid recall just so they don't, go running down Broad Street, if they slip off of that leash. But again, we're all going to have a slightly different goal set. I never set out to write books, and I never set out to invent anything or develop a technique. And I do want to talk about that a little bit in a minute, but I didn't set out to do any of those things. I just set out to be better than I was at what I was doing. I always just wanted to be better at it. And I was hard on myself. And that's something that you're familiar with, that sense.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, you do. Guys, you know what? If you are in the listening audience and you are a dog trainer, you're a sensitive creature and you know it, because we have to earn our stripes with every single dog. Doesn't matter how good your website is or your Yelp is or your reviews or whatever. Every dog looks at you and goes, yeah, who the hell are you? And you have to prove it all over again. So we are sensitive creatures. And if you're a dog owner, when you're talking to your dog trainer, we sound very convincing and very sure of ourselves, but inside we're all we're all like one step away from needing therapy. So I just always was hard on myself in the sense that I wanted to do better. If I had a session that didn't go well, if the dog didn't learn enough, if the dog didn't look like he was enjoying it, if I couldn't progress that dog, if I couldn't make the training work for the owner, it bothered me. It would just bother me. I really wanted to be better. And I have a slightly obsessive personality, which can be a bit of a bother, but it can also pay dividends if it gets focused on something useful. And I think maybe in my particular case, dog training was the first damn thing I was any good at. It was just fate, because I wasn't good at a lot of things. And, who didn't have a slightly troubled childhood? So I did too. I don't need to, there's no one-upping. I think childhood's a rough thing, for everybody to go through. And I would say it was for me. And then I discovered dogs and dog training. Had to train my dog because he got hit by a car and he lived, but we needed to make sure that didn't happen again. And it turned out I was an incredibly good dog trainer, or so I thought. But what the reality really was, I had a really good dog. And it took me, I had to start training other people's dogs before I realized, I'm not that good. I just had like an amazing dog. In fact, his name was Gus. He was a Sheltie. He won a lot of awards. I say he won rather than I won because it was him. He won a Dog World Award.
Oh, that's awesome.
When I was 13, this is a great dog. And I swear to God, you could just train that dog and he'd go, okay, look, you know what? You're really kind of messing this up, but I'll fix it. Just stop. I'll fix this. Look, let's do it like this. And that was, how I got started. So I got hooked on always wanting to be better. And when that dog passed away, I just always wanted to be able to honor his memory with the gifts that he gave me, because he taught me so much about love and about giving. He gave me so much. I don't think I was as easy on him as I am on dogs now. I don't think I was as patient with him. But I mean, I was a teenager, or not even.
Yeah, who is? Who is?
Right. So I always look back on that particular dog with a lot of gratitude, and I just want to serve that memory, right? So when I got my butt dragged, Mary Mazzari dragged me by the ear like a little kid, like Granny on the Clampets. Yeah, Jed, get over here. She just dragged me to see these e-collars, and I was a little salty about it. But like I said, when I saw what I saw, I was intrigued. The dogs were not enjoying themselves. By no means were they screaming and shrieking. No, they were not. But they weren't enjoying themselves, and that troubled me on the one hand. On the other hand, the learning curve was very quick. And I thought, I wonder if I can do it better. I wonder if I can pull something out of this. And so from that, like I said, it took 3 years, maybe 4 even. But what I did was I developed an approach, okay? I don't know. Would you call it a method, a system? I don't know. I call it an approach because that's a word Brother Christopher uses, and it resonates for me. A lot of people train dogs with e-collars, and some of them are brilliant at it. I mean, look at Larry Cron's videos. Like, he's just terrific. He just, has just brought that to life for people. And then there are other people who make videos about e-collars, and I think they should be, in jail because I don't like the way it looks. But there's always been great dog training, and there's always been bad dog training, and there always will be, in every field of endeavor, you've got good, bad, and indifferent, good, bad, and ugly. And I just always wanted to be good. But in the quest to become good, the problem I faced when I first started was there was new technology, but there was not new methodology. Okay. Technology requires methodology to be used. So what if somebody invents a time machine, but like nobody knows how to use it? Well, you'll have to develop the method to use the thing. Or, I hope I'm making myself clear, right?
Yeah,
because there's this thing, right? What if you didn't know what to do with, fire was not an invention. It was a discovery, same as electricity, but people took, hundreds of years to figure out like what to do with these elements to make them really useful to people. And that to me felt like the challenge, because there was nobody that I could study with who could say, do it like this and it'll be good, So I felt like I had to do that for myself. But Mary Mazzari had also introduced me to Bill Keeler and his books. And so I kind of, I think I took off from there. And at the end of the day, I developed an approach which is by and large enjoyable for the dog, right? The dog, it's gentle. The dog is poised to enjoy almost all parts of the process. Now, is that a universal 100 dogs out of 100? No, because you have some dogs who just really don't like, being told what to do. They just don't like it. But I would say the average dog will find the pleasure in the approach that I developed. And then I showed it to Brother Christopher. And he came to a seminar that I did with Martin Dealey down at Martin's place in Florida. And then, Brother Christopher was hooked on that, and we started to work together more. And, a little bit later in the broadcast, we can talk about how the book has come to be, but I probably should let you get a word in edgewise on your podcast.
Well, I mean, this is an easy one for me to record. Like, and this the nice thing is because you know your stuff and you're a very good speaker, and you've been writing about this for forever, right? Like, this book has been a huge labor of love for the two of you.
Yeah.
And I know
this is a silly question, but you're recording, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't see that on my computer. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm recording on software separate from the meeting.
Very good.
But as I was gonna say,
should I just keep rolling?
No. You're like you've been working on this. You've been thinking about this a lot, so your thoughts are really well organized on it. So you do have a flow to your thoughts and your story. Your story is very, it's very not moving. That's not what I mean to say. His story is well crafted. It flows
it's been
nicely.
So much on my mind, because to write a book, I think it would be interesting sometime to do a broadcast on how to write a book, notwithstanding the subject matter, because to write a book, you really have to formulate like the whole arc of everything you want to say. Mm-hmm. You have to formulate, you have to order it. It has to be coherent, and you have to feel that it's important, worth sharing, and but not self-serving. It has to benefit the reader, or in the case of this podcast, the listener. Mm-hmm. This isn't about how wonderful I am. Ideally, it's what I'd like to convey is you could be a good trainer too. You just need better books than Chad and I had to start with. Chad had a pretty damn good one though. But if we have better support materials, we can make people into better trainers, and you can train your own dog if you have some really good, really good help to do that. Although there's always going to be an enormous benefit to professional dog training. Good professional dog training is going to rocket you ahead. I mean, you can learn to juggle from reading a book on juggling, but if you hire a really wonderful juggler to teach you, you will learn in, a fraction of the time with a fraction of the headaches. So I still think professional dog training is a big deal. But look, at the end of the day, Brother Christopher also liked what he saw. He began to incorporate it into the training program at New Skeet. And I don't want to speak for him, but I've heard him talk about it, and it was a big deal to him after he went home to the monastery. Now, if you're not familiar with the monks of New Skeet, just Google them. But they wrote some best-selling dog books, including The Art of Raising a Puppy and How to Be Your Dog's Best Friend. And they've sold well over 1 million books. Mm-hmm. So they have their own thing, and they've had their own thing for decades, since the 70s. And so to change their thing, it was like kind of a big deal. But after working with Martin and myself at that seminar, and after going home and incorporating it into the training program with his own personal German Shepherds at the monastery, because they breed and raise German Shepherds and sell them, he decided that he really needed to integrate it into the overall training program, because they train dogs for other people in a board and train, as do you and I, Chad. And he decided that he needed to do that because he felt like he had a moral imperative, because it was better.
It's an interesting thing. One of the things about the e-collar that I noticed, because I think you and I are alike in this, that when we first started doing e-collar work with dogs, it took a while to really get over our own learned fear of electricity. Like yeah. We didn't want to hit the button more than we had to, so we certainly didn't want to hurt the dog. And I think that desire to like, I know that for myself, I become kind of desensitized to leash corrections. Like, I could crank on it like pretty hard with a leash and not think anything of it, right? Mm. But I didn't want to shock them hard, right?
Yeah.
And so that my own aversion to using electricity gratuitously really forced me to look at training from a more subtle lens, to try and make my training more subtle. It didn't hurt that I had people like you and Martin showing me what to do, because you're both very, very gentle in all aspects. Like, not just, I mean, put a leash in your hands, you're still gentle, like way more gentle than I was, because I didn't have a mentor to say, hey, that's too much for that dog. But
if you're being cruel to a dog with a leash, you tend to know it at the moment you're doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with a button, it's kind of easy to do it accidentally if you don't know what you're doing, or at least
Right.
that's the fear of a lot of people. So
Yeah. But
yeah.
but I think the e-collar made me a better trainer because it forced me to look at the dog in a more discerning way and look for softer ways to do things. It taught me the art of negotiating, like that wasn't there before. Is
That's
some
such a lovely word because really, I think good dog training involves a tremendous amount of good give and take. I mean, what is negotiation but trying to come up with a win-win situation, right?
mm-hmm.
And or at least that's the way I would choose to look at it. I mean, if I don't believe that good negotiations should be a zero-sum game, and I don't believe that dog training should be either. There has to be something in it for everybody. I'm trying to liberate a dog. He just doesn't know what he needs because he's a dog, and we've brought him into the human world, right? But I guess there's a danger of looking at the e-collar as some kind of a magic wand, as though it were a silver bullet. Like when I told you, put an e-collar on that dog, put an e-collar on that dog, put an e-collar on that dog, I was just being my bubbly, slightly obnoxious self, 20 years ago. Because the thing is, what I realize now, what I know now is, it's not strapping an e-collar on a dog. That is not a magic cure. It's not like, put a leash on that dog. That doesn't train him either. It's good training. Here's what we're doing in the art of training your dog. Brother Christopher and I, in that book, we are attempting to build a system around the following two things. Number one, we will tell you what makes a good e-collar, because believe me, as Chad opened up by saying, there's more junk on the market than there is good stuff. And with a bad e-collar, you cannot do good training. You cannot. And so we really want to educate people on what makes a good e-collar. Fortunately, there are a number of really excellent pieces of equipment out there, companies who have put an awful lot of time, trouble, effort, and money into R&D, into development, into creating products that are worthy of your dog, guys. But the problem is that people can't really tell them apart from the cheaper ones, because if you start comparing feature lists, they sound kind of similar. So what we wanted to do in the art of training your dog was, first, educate people about how dogs think, right? So there are a few chapters about how dogs think and learn, and how electronics can integrate in a really organic way into your dog's life, because you wouldn't think so. If you don't know, you don't know, and we want to help. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot about the dog and what the dog needs to be a happy, liberated animal that shares your life, how to make that relationship profoundly connected to you in a way that will surpass what you would have ever really imagined, right? So we talk about that. And then we talk about e-collars, but I think we really rip the Band-Aid off. We really, we are unapologetic. There are good e-collars and there are not good e-collars, and Joe Public needs to know the difference before they do psychological damage to their dog or themselves.
It is not rare for people to come in to seek me for a consult after they've bought an e-collar, but it is rare that the collar they've brought me, or they bought before they met me, is anything that I would use on a dog that I hated, much less a dog that I want to succeed.
Me too. And a lot of times those people come in and say, I freaked myself out, or I freaked my dog out, or I opened it, I started to read the directions, such as they were, because a lot of times directions are very, very minimal. And then, so the luckiest dogs are owned by people who bought an e-collar and then realized they probably shouldn't use it, so they just didn't. Mm-hmm. Not all e-collars are built alike. So that's the first thing. So we want to teach people, like, what's a decent one. Then once we have a decent e-collar for the dog, well, what do we do with it? Not every car, let's say, is a good car, but you can't just give a kid a car. Let's say it's a good car. It's got the JD Power Associates Car of the Year award. You can't just throw the keys at a 16-year-old kid and give them nothing but the rules of the road, that you would get at the DMV, and say, here, good luck, And by the way, next week, I want you driving down a 4-lane highway at midnight in a rainstorm. You can't do that. There needs to be an educational approach that's coherent. And educational approaches are not all coherent, and they're not all alike. Now, I'm going to make a case for my approach with the monks that we put into this book. There are other approaches that I think are also quite good, and there are some that are just awful, right? Just like the nature of e-collars. It's not really a question of just get a good tool and you're done. It's get a good tool and learn how to use it well. And if you're going to use it well, you need a very sequential, day-by-day method. What do you do on day one? When you start training your dog? What do you do on day 2, day 3, day 4? And what we did in the art of training your dog was we presented a 6-week training program that starts with you training your dog in your kitchen, and it ends with your dog loose in a big old field or a park if you have access to that. And if you don't, we'll tell you what you can do to substitute instead. But it would go all the way from your dog knows 0, and you start your training in the kitchen. And by the end of the 6th week, because it's a 6-week training program, by the end of the 6th week, if all has gone well, the average dog and the average owner could go for an off-leash hike in the woods and get your dog back off of a squirrel or a deer or a rabbit. Okay, so we need to tell you what to do every single day, and we need to lay that out in words and in pictures, and that's what we've done. There's 200 pictures in this book, and we show sequences of here's what a turn looks like, here's what a recall looks like at every given stage. Because first we teach it where it's not especially distracting, then we go to a slightly higher distracting environment, and then finally we seek out and build extremely distracting environments, because no training is any good if it works only in your kitchen. You have to be able to enjoy it anywhere, right? But this particular approach starts teaching with the e-collar on like in the first week. Okay, we do present 1 or 2 quick little lessons to people in the very beginning that do not involve the e-collar. But within the first week, we're teaching with the e-collar in a very gentle way. We just do a couple days of prep first. Now, I know that a lot of people, a lot of trainers suggest training the dog fully, training all the commands fully, and then putting the e-collar on, going back and redoing all of it again, layering the e-collar on as a reinforcement mechanism to the known commands. And I'm here to tell you that works. There's nothing wrong with that approach. It works. So if that's your approach, if you're a professional trainer listening to me right now, it works what you're doing. But what if there's a different way to do it that's faster? You might be resistant to that idea, just in the way I was resistant to the whole idea of e-collars, because it was not my tool, right? It was not in my framework. It was not in my wheelhouse. And like so many people, dog trainers are probably more subject to confirmation bias than any group you'd ever want to meet, because when we find a thing that works, we want to do that thing because it works, and we're sensitive. We don't want to mess up. I'll tell you what, we don't want to mess up. So when we find a thing that works, one of the things that I like best about you, Chad, by the way, as an aside, is you're never satisfied. You find a thing that works, and then immediately you want to deconstruct it and find something that works better. I always tease you. You're never satisfied.
It's a curse.
You always want it better.
Well, it's not by my choice. I can't help it.
It makes it very hard to enjoy. Yeah. I know it's the brain. It's the way your brain works. I get that. But I guess what I was coming to is I didn't have any bias about how the e-collar should be used, because I didn't know a damn thing about how to do it. I knew how to train a dog, and I knew what the e-collar, what its features were, but there was no methodology, and there was nobody to tell me what to do or what not to do. And so I just experimented for a few years. And what I found was very, very, very early on, almost instantly, you could use it as a very gentle teaching tool to just catch the dog's attention. And that's what we're really doing here. I think of training dogs with an e-collar as having 3 levels. Now, mind you, most e-collars have way more than that, and they need to, and we talk about that in the book. But I think about e-collars in terms of 3 levels, and this is what we discuss in the book when we give the lesson plan, and we talk about how to establish a level at any given moment. The first thing that we want to do is we want a level which just catches the dog's attention, just something that the dog can just feel, like if a friend tapped you on the shoulder during normal conversation. That's the educational level. And we just want to pair some really wonderful body language, some crystal clear body language. We want to pair with that tap on the shoulder. Because the sensation from the collar should be so low that it's completely untroubling to the dog. Now, this opens up a slightly different can of worms. There's any number of dog trainers, including some really good ones, who advocate putting the collar on the dog, pushing the button on increasing levels until the dog gives some sign that he feels it. Flicking an ear, twitching, looking around, scratching, that kind of thing. And I'm not going to say that's bad. This is not what I do, but I'm going to say I'm not going to say it's bad. But here's the thing. If you're a professional dog trainer with a really finely honed ability to read a dog, you are probably going to recognize when the dog feels that sensation much quicker than an owner will, who may love his dog but doesn't understand the species quite as well as you and hasn't trained hundreds, or at this point in my life, thousands and thousands of dogs with an e-collar. So he doesn't know what all those little tiny reactions are. And so an unskilled hand might not actually notice that the dog is feeling an e-collar until that dog is actually mildly uncomfortable. And that kind of defeats the whole purpose of training in a gentle, motivational way, right? So we talk in the book about how to even know if your dog feels the educational level of the collar, which is meant to be so low that the dog can feel it, but also so low that the dog feels no need to say, hey, I felt that. So that point where the dog barely feels it, he's not going to say, excuse me, I felt that. And I call that the educational level in the book. And but there's another level where the dog goes, okay, what was that? It didn't bother me, but like I should ask the question, what is that? Like, something got me a little, a little more insistently. And we call that the reinforcement level. If you artfully train your dog, you may never need to go beyond that second level, whatever that is, which is the level that catches a dog's attention when he's distracted. Is there another level which is like more insistent yet? Dog running into street after ball, and you just got to get his attention super quick, fast when he's at full arousal, full peak of adrenaline. Yep. We could call that interrupter level. So that's not the level. That's not a level that's designed. There is no level for punishing your dog, by the way. In my opinion, and Brother Christopher's opinion, in the art of training your dog, there is no how to punish your dog at all. That doesn't appear. It's how to train your dog. It's how to motivate your dog. But, at a certain point, we want safety. So we want to be able to get a dog off of a deer. Yes, we do. And yes, we can. And generally speaking, you do not have to punish a dog to do that. So if you've got bias that has to be, the answer is it doesn't. And I'll show you how. Maybe the only place you have to really make a dog decidedly uncomfortable is if you live in Colorado or Arizona and you're rattlesnake proofing a dog, but that's something completely different than training. That's just rattlesnake proofing.
I'm really glad you brought up the idea of the levels, right? In terms of like finding the level, because that's one of the things. Like where I started out, that was the standard procedure. Like you tap the button, you look for the sign of the dog, you keep going up the dial until the dog shows you some sort of sign that they're feeling it, and that's your base level, your training level, your working level, whatever. And we all did that. And I remember I was working with a dog, and I had a really bad session with it, and I was really frustrated, and I called you up. And this is, by the way, this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this book, is I have that freedom. I can get you on the phone and say, hey, what do you think about this? And a lot of people don't have that privilege. And this book is kind of like, is going to give people almost that same experience, I hope. And because it is really cool to be able to pick up the phone and call you. And but anyway, I picked up the phone and I called you. I said, man, this really frustrated me. And I'm talking. You go, wait a minute. Did you do that thing where you find the level by going up the, and you said, stop doing that. Stop doing that. And I said, but that's what everybody does. And you go, yeah, but here's the thing. There's a lot of dogs who are very stoic, especially your bully breeds. And by the time they're showing you any sign they're feeling that, they're well into discomfort. Like that neutral sensation doesn't get a reaction from them because they're stoic. And so if you start to see them, like if you're doing that with a soft dog and they do that, then that's probably what the first place they perceive it. But with a lot of these stoic breeds, you're going to be working at levels that are unpleasant, and your dog is freaking out because you're hurting him. And
I know, they silently scream to themselves.
and so from that was the last time I ever did that. That was the last time I ever used that approach to find the levels. So, and it wasn't until last year that I heard another professional who's known for e-collar work say, I don't do that either. And I was like, I even sent you a text from the seminar. I don't know if you remember that, but I was like, hey, this guy's stealing your stuff, right?
No, look, it should spread because it's good. By the way, who taught me, very, very similar scenario, who taught me not to do that, not to just strap on the e-collar, start pushing buttons and wait for the reaction, which is what you did to that dog that you had that bad session. The dogs that taught me not to do it that way were, just as you said, literally English bulldogs. Mm-hmm. I remember once years ago, somebody saying to me, what's your favorite breed to train? And I didn't really have one. And because, I like dogs. So part of the pleasure of being a dog trainer is you get to train so many breeds. It's like trying on everything, mm-hmm. And it's like eating from the buffet. You get to, taste everything. And I love that. But when they said to me, what's your least favorite dog to train? It didn't take me, but I immediately knew what the answer was. And the answer was bulldogs. And the reason that I didn't like, and I love bulldogs now, but at the time I really hated training bulldogs. And the reason was every bulldog I tried to train back in the early years of developing the methodology for this book, every one of those bulldogs bit me. You told me you had a similar experience with boxers.
Male boxers, just males. Every male boxer I trained for the first 2 years tried to bite me.
Well, you know what? They're big babies, those boxers. They could throw a lot of pressure at you on just a slip lead or a collar, but they can't take any. So they're tricky too. But every bulldog I tried to train basically bit me. And I mean, literally bit me. So I had to sort of back chain it. And I still remember the bulldog who finally explained it to me. Okay. I don't remember her name, but she was a lovely little thing. She's a sweet, sweet little dog. And I remember I just wanted one last sit. Just one last sit.
Oh, the One More Time Club.
That was it. I just wanted one more. I've learned better since then. Guys, knowing when to quit is a big deal. If you have a hard time with a dog and they give you one, stop. Take your win. Let them sleep on it. Let them go to bed on that one.
Yes.
So, but yeah, no, I was definitely a card carrying member of the One More Time Club, and I wanted one more. And I tapped the button on a level that seemed to be working just fine for this little bulldog female, and she wouldn't sit. So I tapped it again. She wouldn't sit. So I tapped again. She wouldn't sit. So I turned it up a little, thinking, she doesn't feel it, And when I did that, she came up the leash at me. Now, this was a really nice dog. And in the worst way, she did not want to bite me. But she had to do something to stop me because, I was really making her uncomfortable, and she just had to stop me. So she bit the leash instead. She came right up at me, and she had a better shot at me than at the leash. She had to go out of her way to bite the leash.
Right.
But she bit the leash. The problem was, this is ingrained into my memory, how thank you to all the dogs out there who have knocked me, have knocked some sense into me over the years. I do try and listen. Dogs are your best teacher, people. Dogs will teach you so much if we can just learn to listen. And this dog, when she bit the leash, she did it all in a panic, and she bit her own tongue too, right? So I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but a dog who bites its own tongue, they bleed a lot. Mm-hmm. It coagulates very quickly, but I mean, it's really scary there for a minute. And so I stopped. The best thing I did in that particular situation was I just stopped, because I didn't know what was happening, and I knew she was nice, and I just didn't understand what was happening. So I stopped, and the second I stopped, she stopped. She just instantly de-escalated. And so I thought, I got to walk home. I was in a training field not far from home. I'm going to walk back to the house and ponder this, because this is really weird. This poor little thing. She was fine, by the way, guys, but boy, it made such an impression on me, that I lost track of her when I was walking her home. I let her get ahead of me. Usually I want the dogs by my side, but she got ahead of me. She wasn't pulling. She just got ahead of me. And that's when I looked at her, and I looked at her little lady bits with a green discharge. coming out of them, and she was kind of red and inflamed in the rear, right? And she'd only been with me for a few days, but she had a raging UTI. That was just as soon as I saw her, what it hadn't been evident before, but it just erupted, this huge UTI. She was red in the fanny, inflamed, and had a discharge. And I know what she was trying to say. Listen, the first 5 times you made me sit, I'm a good girl. I wanted to do it for you. But they hurt, every one of them, because my little fanny hurts. But I'll do them. But that 6th one that you asked for, I can't do it. I can't. Please understand. And I didn't understand until I saw it, and I was able to decode and, and get to the bottom of it. So what I discovered that was really helpful to me was to understand that, because she wasn't belligerent, and I pushed her into failure. And so what I learned about bulldogs, I did some experiments with bulldogs after that. And here's what I did. I turned those collars lower than normal. Not even normal, whatever normal is, for you and your collar that you use on the average dog. I went like half of that. Okay. And all I did was tap the button, give him a piece of chicken, tap the button, give him a piece of chicken. Then I waited till the dog would look away, tap the button. And you know what? Damned if every single bulldog didn't come right at me and go, chicken, 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 which they can't do if they weren't feeling it. And I had such a facepalm moment back then, realizing, oh my God, bulldogs are big babies. They're big babies. We talk about it in the book. In the Art of Training Your Dog, we make note of the fact that tight-coated muscular breeds often feel things way before any other kind of dog. We don't know why. I still don't know why. But something about their biochemistry and sensitivity makes them look tough and act like babies. So we want people to take that into account when training the dog. But it was a really good lesson for me, because what I learned was it's way better to underwhelm a dog until you figure it all out than it is to overwhelm a dog and then have to apologize. I just really don't want to have to apologize to a dog again. So it made me careful.
I love that story, and it's for so many reasons. But the thing that is most impressive is that I think most trainers I know, at that moment that dog came up the leash at them, and there's a few exceptions, and I like to think I'm one of them, but I wasn't for a long portion of my career, would be by that point so frustrated and so irritated by what was happening that they would be incapable of going, wait a minute, this is not in this dog's character. What happened? How this has to be my fault because this dog does not behave this way.
Yeah.
I think most trainers have this, like, and again, I think it's getting better, but I think there's at least a high percentage of trainers that are just at that point in time, they're already frustrated because the dog's not giving them what they want. Like, they went up on that collar because they were frustrated, and then the dog came back at them, and that got them more frustrated, right? And now they're in a fight, and it is such a great story where you had the wherewithal to go, wait a minute, this is not what I wanted to happen. This is not what should have happened. And I'm the guy with the thumbs and the big brain, so this is clearly my fault. And I better,
it was. I had to either go into fight or think mode, and it's really hard to come out of an adrenaline rush with a dog trying to bite you, and to come out of adrenaline mode and just stop and de-escalate. But the thing was this was not just a dog. She was like the sweetest little toadstool you'd ever run into in your life. I mean, she was ugly, okay, but she was so beautiful. What a beautiful soul. And it was just evident. This was a dog who just wore her beauty, like an aura all around her. I mean, she was naughty and she was nuts and she needed training, but like, she was just such a good egg, that this was so out of character that I realized, I don't know what's happening here, but I think I've pushed her to it, and I don't know why. So, and this is a good time for me to mention, since we're about an hour in, that you can use an e-collar to solve a lot of problems. And by problems, I don't mean so much like teaching good behaviors such as come or. I mean, you could teach good behaviors with an e-collar, and we do. We take people all the way through off-leash training and teach them how to eventually be able to enjoy their training without an e-collar on the dog ultimately. And we teach place, and we teach pretty much anything that you'd want your dog to know is in this book. But most people go to a dog trainer saying, I need this dog to quit barking, jumping, surfing tables, and running out the door, bolting the door. Like they'll give you a laundry list of things. And it's like a hit list, like you were a contractor, you know, it's all the defects. And the e-collar, fence jumping, digging, bolting, licking items in the dishwasher, playing too hard with the cat, chasing the cat, eating out of the cat box, eating out of the counters, eating too much junk from the ground, scavenging, pica. I mean, there's just a million things. And can you use an e-collar to cure those things? The answer is yes, you can. Yes, you can, but. And I think this is a really, really critical but. So it's kind of like, I think the right kind of conclusion, because now mentally I'm in the back of the book now. If you will train your dog, the intensity, frequency, and number of problems that you suffer with that dog are going to diminish radically, because you'll have established a layer of understanding between you and the dog. Training a dog teaches you to understand one another and to negotiate a peace and to find the beauty in the relationship. You know, ideally you want your dog to be your partner, but your junior partner, because sometimes he's going to want to run after that squirrel into the street, and it's just not a good moment to do that. So you got to be able to overrule him. But your goal as an owner is to fulfill your dog, and your dog will want to fulfill you once he understands that's possible. So I assure you, the art of training your dog is going to help you solve like almost any dog training, you know, dog behavioral irregularity or problem that you could think of. And we put those in the appendix. Anything special you need to know after you train your dog. If you still have that problem, we tell you how to cure like everything. But if you train your dog first, you probably won't need to. And very, very little, even in the problem section, is going to be troubling to the average dog or dog owner. There's really nothing about how to like make your dog yelp or how to make your dog sorry, you know, that he did that. It's all about how to use consistency and good training to get your way. But I guess that's the thing I really want to stress is, if you want to solve your dog's behavior problems, part of the secret is going to be spending quality time with her so that you can dedicate some of your brain to her, get yourself out of your, you know, out of your Facebook, get yourself out of your Zooms, get yourself out of your stresses and your worries, and, you know, go smell grass, or, you know, go smell the neighborhood with your dog. But if you do it in a coherent way with guidance from really good dog trainers and really good coherent approach, and a really quality piece of equipment and technology in the right e-collar for you and your dog, most of your problems are going to melt away, and the few that remain, well, we'll help you knock those over like little dominoes at the end of the process.
It sounds great. Like I'm really excited. I'm really excited to read it myself. I know it's going to be great. One thing that I wanted to sort of touch on with you a little bit while I have you here is the like you mentioned it already, like obedience. In my opinion, obedience, the best thing that obedience can do for us as trainers in the relationship with our dog is obedience. Well, first of all, it creates that foundation that you talked about, that ability to communicate and read each other and practice at cooperating with each other. But all of the obedience commands at some point in time, if you're layering in distractions, come down to self-regulation on the dog's part.
Impulse control.
Yes, the dog has to decide, I want to do this, but I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And the way I describe it to my clients is that's like a muscle, right? Every time they do a rep with that muscle, they make it stronger. And so while I may start with getting the dog to ignore kibble in a relatively sterile training room environment, it's the same muscle is going to need to ignore that deer. It's just not strong enough for that yet. And that's one of the character benefits I find of doing a lot of obedience. Like, again, you're going to avoid that problem-solving section for so many dogs if you just build the training incorrectly.
In fact, we talk about that in the art of training your dog, because we want to reward the dog's effort to control his impulses. So there will be a point in the there's a point in the training where we've introduced, well, very early on this is a very coherent training program with like multiple lessons and a daily planner, because again, it's a 6-week program. So the daily planner will tell you what you're doing every day for 6 weeks. And most days that training is, done in 15-minute increments or less. So it's not killer for your time zone but I guess the point I wanted to make is, there's an exercise that we introduced early on. We started in your kitchen or in your living room. We call it the Purposeful Walk. And eventually, it's walking with a purpose. Okay. It's walking like a pack leader. It's like walking like a boss, like, where you're going, walking like a New Yorker, walking like a busy business executive on the way to a meeting, and going to close the deal. And we're going to make this happen. And we describe exactly what you should do with your body, your hands, your leash, ultimately your e-collar. And we show lots of photographs of this so people can grasp it. Because the funny thing is that when you show your dog a little command presence, you don't have to be rude at all. They just want to go, like, ooh, we're going somewhere important. Let's do this thing. And they fall in the line. It's a beautiful thing. If you can communicate to your dog with your attitude what you want, then you don't have to be, issuing a whole lot of commands. But the Purposeful Walk eventually becomes a walk in a 25-acre field with your dog loose, dragging a line, and eventually no line on whatsoever. And it's the same walk with attitude kind of a thing. But when we get deeper into the process, we talk about turning your dog away or recalling your dog away from certain distractions. And a lot of times those are going to be visual things like, oh, I saw a bird over there. Or for a huge amount of dogs, is going to be olfactory. The dog is going to smell something. They want to sniff. They want to linger, but you want the dog to move along and come with me. So we teach you how to insist on that, how to get that, how to make your dog say, well, I really wanted to go smell that raccoon pee, but mom wants me to go with her, so I'm going to do it. But the moment you get that compliance, we talk about going right back to that spot and freeing your dog, right? Give them that moment. Show them, I have everything you want. I have everything you need, and I am here to share it. It just has to be under my terms for safety's sake. But let's go. I had a woman. Here's a funny story. I had a lady. She had a Springer Spaniel. No, a Welsh Spaniel. And this dog, she lived across a road, and it was a pretty big, fast road. But she lived across the road from a park where geese used to congregate in that park. And this is a bird dog. So this dog, every time she'd open her front door, this dog would like bolt out of the house, run across like 4 lanes of traffic to get into that park and chase those geese. So she was very, very, very insistent with me that I should fix this. And I only had a week on that dog, which really, I make no promises if you only give me your dog for a week. I wanted 2. She said, no, you only get 1. Like, well, okay, fine. You might have to come back for lessons. But this dog was a genius. He just learned everything super quick, fast. She came back a week later, and I demoed, calling this dog away. He saw birds, and we trained him loose in a field. And he saw all kinds of things, including birds. And he just would like check in with me or her and make eye contact, and not in a fearful way. He was a happy dog, right? But he ignored the birds. But the reaction of the lady made me laugh, Chad, because she said, "Aw." And I was like, what? And she said, he used to love that.
Similar story. I had a guy call me
I'm
up.
not done. Wait. Almost done. Done. Well, it made me feel a little mad. I'm like, well, you're the lady. You were you shoved it down my throat. Fix this. And I said, well, you can let him do it sometimes. She goes, how do you do that? And I thought, I don't really know. So he saw a bird land at the other end of the field. He made eye contact with me. And I said, go get him, go get him, go get him. And he looked at me, this dog did, like, are you kidding, for real? And I'm like, yeah, go get him. I just encouraged him, right? And he took off after that bird, went up in the air. And then I just called him straight back. And he came back, and he was happy as a clam. So that goes to what you're talking about right now. If a dog gives you a sacrifice, find the way to reward that.
Yes.
So that they find the pleasure in doing it. It's not all sacrifice.
Yeah, I tell all my clients, I use that same tactic a lot. Like, give them the thing, call them away from something good, give them something good, and then let them go back to the thing that they like, right?
That's
and
right. Yeah.
And I use that all the time. Anything the dog wants in the environment can be the reinforcer, can be the reward. If it's safe to allow them to have it, right?
That's right.
Yep. But my story is a little similar. Somebody called me up and they said, my dog's got good obedience, but I can't get him to, ride nicely in the car. He looks out the window, he barks at everything, cars, motorcycles, dogs, whatever. He just barks the whole time he's in the car.
Put a knee
right?
color on that dog.
Well, so this was long before, this was years before I joined IACP. But I knew the basic Keeler process of teach a dog to ride nicely in a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, does your dog know how to stay? He's like, yes. I said, okay, well, I can talk you through this and we can, I can help you probably in one lesson. Like we might have to do a follow up, but I can teach you the roadmap in one lesson. And so he shows up and he was a liar. His dog didn't have a stay, but at all. Like, I had to teach the dog to stay there. But I get the dog in the car and basically the rule I'm using, this dog has to do a downstay when he's in the back seat of the car, right? So he's doing it in the back seat. And we get to the point in this one lesson where I'm in the front seat. Like the first couple of times I rode in the back seat with the dog, right? But I get to the point where I'm riding in the front seat with the dog is down and he's not barking. And, we get back, an hour of decently diligent work and we got the dog. The problem's solved. Like he's going to still need to make it a habit by practicing, but we're there and I get done and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Like, cause I told him I could get him started if his dog had to stay.
Was mad, right?
then he says that. He says that exact same thing. I think he was happier before. And I'm like, well, listen, don't practice any of this and you'll get the old dog back, but you still got to pay me for today.
More than once I've had to tell somebody, I am the dog's therapist. If you need one, you can go find one, but that's not my, that's not my area of expertise.
Oh,
you have to be careful with that line so that it comes out funny, not mean. But actually, there's been a time or two where I had to explain to a couple who were wouldn't stop arguing. Like, look, dog training is $150 an hour. Marriage counseling is $300 an hour. Just how much of a check do you care to write out today? So then I know what I'm doing for you guys.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if we can put people and their dogs on the same page, they're going to be happier together. If we could put couples on the same page with their dog, they're going to be happier together. So really, I think at the end of the day, that's the goal of all good dog trainers is to put people and dogs together. Now, there's not all good dog training is not all dog training is good. And sometimes a dog trainer's ego gets in the way, but I don't know. I don't have anything to prove. And I learned a long time ago, listen to the dog because it's a lot better to listen than to have to apologize later.
That's so true. So true. So the book comes out what day?
Well, it is available. The Art of Training Your Dog is available on pre-sale right now, wherever books are sold. Okay. So anybody who sells books, you could pre-order it there. So just, I'm not allowed to play favorites and give you links. So just, look up or Google it, The Art of Training Your Dog. And you can pre-order it now, which would be great. And then it will ship to you on October 6th. So that's its official release date, but it is available right now for pre-order.
And if they check out your Facebook page, they can find out how to get an autograph for the book.
Well, yeah, actually I can kind of tell you, I can read it out here. If you do we want to thank people who are doing pre-orders. We're not going to carry this forward. What I'm about to say is only good for pre-orders. Okay. But
offer expires October 6th.
Exactly. If you pre-order, then all you need to do is print out your pre-order receipt right off your computer or your phone. Just print out a screenshot of it and send that along with a self-addressed stamped envelope to Marc Goldberg, 847 South Randall Road, Suite 302, Elgin, Illinois, 60123. And I will send you a book plate to affix into your book that has been signed by both Brother Christopher and myself. So that's just as a thank you for pre-ordering. Not necessary, but we'd like to thank people if we can.
And is it going to be available in an audio format too, or?
Yeah. Okay. So good question. The deal was just made for that. So this book will be out in print October 6th. By the way, it's hardcover. It's 280 pages. I forget the exact number. I'm really close. 204 full color photographs that illustrate exactly how to do everything. And then, but it'll also be out electronically and in the form of, I'm pretty sure I'm correct, Kindle, iBooks, like however electronic books are done, and in the full the full retinue of formats. It'll be available in all of those. And there is an audio version. There will be an audio version, and that means, to the best of my knowledge, it will ultimately appear on Audible.com as well, but I think you might even be able to buy it on audio CDs if you prefer. But most people like Audible, so
All right, cool,
they
cool.
can get it there, along with our last book, Let Dogs Be Dogs.
Awesome book that has been featured on. You came on to Dog Training Conversations before that one, I think.
Yeah.
And
Well, that one tells you how dogs tick, and if you do the right things in your home, you know you're not going to need that much training. But if there's any limitation on that, it's a dog psychology book, and I think it's very good. There's a lot of wisdom in it to help people, but a lot of people want to know, how do I do this? How do I do that? And that's what the new book is for.
that is so awesome. I'm so excited to see it. And I'm so glad that other people get to. I've been bragging about you for years. And as you have embraced the role of dog trainer versus dog training guru, it's been harder and harder to get people to recognize the tremendous wealth of information that you have that you can share with the dog training community. So I think it's exciting for that to get out too. You definitely have been very influential in my career, in my life, and the way I see dogs and see the relationship between myself and dogs. And I always invite other people to check your stuff out, because I think they don't realize the depth that's there. And
well, thanks for that. I mean, there are some terrific people in this industry, and then there's some but I don't know. I'll tell you a thing. My co-author is a monk, you know, so they don't come any more humble, and they don't come any more humble than a monk. And my monk is a New York Times best-selling author. You know, he has reason to be, a little bit uppity, and he's not. And I remember when we wrote and published Let Dogs Be Dogs. I don't know. It was like his 6th or 7th book in 25 years, but it was my first baby, right? So I remember asking him, I said, Brother Christopher, what's the best part of having a book out, of putting out a book? Because at that moment, what I was thinking was, for me, my first thought was legacy, that there's this knowledge that doesn't die, so quickly. So I was thinking more like legacy. And but he didn't even think about it. He just immediately answered, and he said, well, the best part about writing books is that we get to help people that we've never even met. And I realized, for him, the training dogs was a lot about dogs, but ultimately, he's a pastor for people. And that in Brother Christopher's mind, the way dogs and people connect, well, it's just spiritually better for people to have that connection be profound and fulfilling. And so he views it as a helping profession. And that really helped me, to know that I could stop worrying about, was I a guru? Was I famous? Was I this? Was I that? The best question I could really ask myself would be, and this is what I think the best of us in our profession do, is to ask ourselves, can we help more people? Can we help them quicker? Can we help them cheaper? Can we help them better? And that's what I want to do. If I can help somebody with a $30 book to really improve their lives, that'll make me very happy. I went to a book conference with Brother Christopher once. It's called BookCon, or Book Expo, in New York. And we were there at the same time as John Grisham, and Hillary Clinton had just put out her autobiography. So there's tens of thousands of people there, and some very famous authors and stuff. And Brother Christopher and I each had a German Shepherd on the leash in the conference center, in the Jacob Javits Conference Center. Brother Christopher in full robes. And it was amazing to me how many people came up to us, or him really, and said, "You saved my dog." And then they would tell a story about how they saved a dog, or they trained their dog with how to be your dog's best friend. But it was uncanny. It was really cool. At least a dozen people came up and thanked him for helping them save their dog that they didn't know if they could keep, just because there was a book out there. And I thought, this is what I want. I want to help people that I've never had the opportunity to meet. So Brother Christopher has been a good influence on me, just like the dogs have been. But I try to be a quick study, and what I've learned is, if the dog and you have a happy and fulfilling relationship, then you can make a connection that surpasses anything that you could really dream imaginable with another species. I mean, they are not our species.
Yeah.
But they sleep in our bed and they occupy our hearts and our lives, and we're the better for that. They make us better.
Thousands of dog trainers just threw their hands up in the air when you said
Well,
they sleep in your bed. Like, hey,
honestly, I don't sleep with the dog, but I have a whole couch for the dogs that like I share with them once in a while. But I mean, like, what's the harm? Like, get with it, people. Like, the reality is that America is going to sleep with their dogs. Now, once in a while, there's a dog I think should be kicked out of bed for a while, and once in a while, there's a dog I think should be kicked out of the room forever. But come on, let's let people enjoy their dogs, but they can still be trained.
Right. It's only a problem if it becomes a problem.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I will say this too. The first dog training book I owned, I mentioned earlier, was Keeler Method of Dog Training. The second dog training book that I owned was How to Be Your Dog's Best Friend. The third dog training book that I owned was The Art of Raising a Puppy. Like,
Yeah,
once I
great book.
discovered the monks, they were like it was like, so I took Keeler as I read it, which you shouldn't do. Like, you should not take Keeler as it reads.
Not very nuanced. The problem with the Keeler book, which is the Keeler Method of Dog Training, for those in the know, is that it's not a nuanced book. I think he exaggerated everything to get people to just do a bit of what he wanted.
It reads very rough, and and so I took it very rough. Like, I was extremely hard on the dogs I was training, and but I didn't like it. I didn't feel good about it. And then I read the How to Be Your Dog's Best Friend, and there was this whole other idea, just fundamental core at it, of respect for the dog.
Yeah.
This being is a gift to you, and you have a responsibility to it. That, like, they put the phrase responsible stewardship into my vocabulary, which is a beautiful way to describe dog ownership. Like we're responsible for them. They aren't our possessions. They're our responsibilities. And that,
well, you put something into my vernacular, which was, I remember you once saying, they are sovereign beings.
oh,
And so they are. But if we connect with them right, we can really liberate them to enjoy life much more.
I thought I stole that from the monks. So,
well, you know what? What goes around comes around.
but that whole idea was changing for me. And so what I still used a lot more of the techniques from the Keeler method, but I applied them in a manner that was consistent with the philosophy outlined in the monks' books. And that's where my journey into softness began, was reading How to Be Your Dog's Best Friend. So I owe Brother Christopher and the monks of Newskeet a tremendous debt for those two books. And of course, continue to work with you, and you work with them. I'm very excited. Like, I'm very proud to call both you and Brother Christopher friend. And I'm also very proud to say that the two of you have influenced me a great deal. So it's really
same here, amigo. And I'm glad to be on your podcast and to share this kind of chit chat with people. I never thought I would write a book. I never thought I would grow up and be a professional dog trainer. I never thought I'd live on a little dog farm. And so I just wake up with gratitude every day for these dogs that let me play with them all day. And it's not always fun. Sometimes you're picking up poop, but it keeps you humble. I'll tell you that. It keeps you humble. If you do your work right, dogs will keep you humble, because you have to earn it every day.
Sweet. So any websites you want to give out? Any thing you
Well, yeah, sure. Thanks. I'll conclude with this. You could get to my personal website at chicagodogtrainer.com. And then we have a website set up for the book and the community that we'll build around the book. And that would be theartoftrainingyourdog.com.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for listening, Mark. It was so good to have you on. I love talking dog with you. And I haven't really got to speak with you since all this lockdown started, so it's been nice to just catch up anyway.
Yeah, I think the same.
All right, guys, that's it for this episode of Something to Bark About. Let me know what you think. If you like this episode, share it with your friends, subscribe to the podcast, and please, please, please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps other people find us. All right, so that's it, guys. We're out of here.